So welcome back to our panel, and I'm happy again to bring these two amazing speakers, panelists here, Mayling Lai and Danye Wang, Kanye without the D. So we have a lot of questions. They have things in common. When we look at their resume, they have like a trillion, billion in fundraising, investment, like very, very impressive. So as a woman in finance, what do you feel about this career?
Wow, you want to take that one first? After you.
Sure. I didn't really specifically choose finance as a career. I chose client facing. Again, to my earlier point, who you are as a person, what type of role you want, and how you can realize what you want to do on a day-to-day activity perspective, and in what type of organization. I was able to join asset management as an industry, but not investment banking, which is sell side, and not consulting, which you get to work with all kinds of different industries, but asset management specifically because I entered a client-facing role. So that was my starting point. But I was lucky to got into BlackRock. If it's not for BlackRock, I probably would have moved around in different financial services firms. But because it happened to be a firm that kept growing in the last decade, and kept acquiring different strategy and different investment capabilities. So I got to see a lot on the platform, and I kind of fall in love with the industry because I had a very relevant entry point. So kind of that's my journey to finance. I did study economics, but at Yale, it was a very liberal arts program. It was very foundational. It's not really about finance or accounting. I guess the merit of this background is that you can really do anything. It's not necessarily because you studied computer science, you will be an engineer, developer. It's not because you studied literature or English, you need to, start being a writer. Regardless of what you studied, you should think bigger and more broadly and keep pushing the envelope. You can choose whatever career you want to choose, but you need to build a relevant track record to prove to the industry that you have things to bring to the table. Yeah. So that's how I got to where I am.
Yeah, I'm so glad you answered that way, because I also, when I graduated, I didn't really understand finance. I'll go ahead and admit it, because there's a lot of people that enter that way, and I just needed to pay back the small loan that I took out to try to, and oddly enough, I applied to probably so many jobs. I mean, and I'm not the only one. I know lots of folks, if you go back through, some people, they get right out of the gates, lots of offers. I actually had to grind to get my offer from Goldman and Morgan Stanley, which oddly enough were the two firms that were my final two offers. I mean, like, I really thank you every day as far as that goes, but that's just how it played out. I ended up on the sell side to begin with, which was in a lot of ways a good match, but I had so much curiosity that it wasn't where I ultimately ended up. The sell side was wonderful, but weirdly enough, what they liked the best about me was what they perceived as a potentially natural inclination towards sales. A natural comfort with talking to clients, a natural comfort with having discussions, a natural trustworthiness in the way that I articulate what I'm saying as being something that is trying to be helpful, that sort of thing. That weirdly enough, it was a random series of jobs that I had before college that became even more important than the fact that I graduated from a great school as the final thing that was the icing on the cake. Finance, I totally agree with you. I loved your answer. Finance can really encompass a lot of different majors. It can definitely encompass a lot of different areas, whether it's technology or whether it's some of the folks on my desk, their key area of expertise was foreign languages, because you do have to be bilingual if you're going to work in certain regions. Even if you're in the United States, if you're selling, French stocks or something like that, you probably need to speak French, or if you're going to work at a French investment bank or something like this. So truly, I agree with you. it's a very flexible industry relative to other industries. I'd say.
Sell side and buy side doesn't always agree with each
No.
other. So
But,
this is
but
great. I'm just
I did,
kidding.
I did
yeah.
both, but I did both. I did.
Yeah.
I was on the sell side. I was on the buy side. I was even on the vendor side at one point. So it's
Yeah.
like it was a very weird path for me.
I do want to say you get to deal with some of the top people in the industry, even at a very early stage.
Oh, that's
and
true.
even
I
as an
agree.
analyst, I'm sure in the sales job, sales and trading,
Yeah.
you have to deal with managing directors, not just internally, but also externally. I was working with sovereign wealth fund central banks, and I have to deal with very institutional quality client out of the gate. So you need to have a high bar. Other people have high bars on you, and you deal with some of the top minds in the industry. And what does that mean? Sometimes it's long hours. Sometimes it's a very demanding job. And markets go up and down. Markets going to do whatever they need to do. And you need to be able to handle pressure. So I think those are the tough points a lot of people can't handle and survive. But that's if you choose this career path, that's just something to be mindful about.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think if there are any specific barrier in this financial industry area for women? And can you please address that?
Do you want to comment first?
So any specific? How do you mean?
Like
Challenges, barriers.
Yeah.
You know, it's so funny because I was actually during the break talking to someone. There are areas where there are more women, and there are areas where there are less women. I would say on the quant space, that can be, you know, in the conversation I was having, that can be challenging. The challenge isn't so much being a woman's in certain ways, okay? Because you can, like I said before, I really do mean it. You can use your strengths. You can use your perceived weaknesses as a strength once you get the complementary skills for it. But in quantitative finance, a lot of times there aren't as many women, and so you don't necessarily get the same mentorship. And so you might experience it or perceive what you're experiencing as hyper competitiveness. Over time, as you feel more comfortable with your own skill set and you have your own confidence, oftentimes that you realize that hyper competitiveness is just plain old fashioned bad EQ on the part of a guy that maybe doesn't know how to interact with women. Sometimes that happens. It is what it is. A lot of times, though, it lends itself to its own opportunities. Like, for example, some of the roles that I had were very quantitative in nature. You know, I managed a quantitative short fund, and it was really just me. And I got invited to a lot of things because there aren't that many women that first of all, manage any funds, let alone like quantitative funds per se. In other cases, you know, one of the roles that I did at my final firm before things transitioned was I built and created the outsourced risk department. And one of the things that was a little bit unique about me versus later when I then trained was the ability to understand my clients, you know, empathize with the client, which doesn't necessarily come naturally to your classic quant. Also, because the soft skills sometimes are ever so slightly stronger with women, I'm not going to, that's just a general comment. Obviously, there are guys that are also really great at this. You know, sometimes I would find that guys felt more comfortable talking to me about the things that they were really worried about and concerned with, and that they wouldn't necessarily get a judgmental reaction on the other side of it. And so that became strengths that I could use to my advantage. You know, it took some time to get comfortable with these strengths and weaknesses and these differences that folks have gender-wise. And, you know, it is, I think, a mistake to pretend like there aren't gender biases, because you cannot change the way you look, and you can't change what history the person you're talking to might have with someone that looks like you. So that you just have to work with.
Yeah. Absolutely. I do think, to your point, there's still a lot of gender differences. But I would say generally, women are great at detail-oriented tasks, and men are very good at big picture. So I do think if you're a woman, when you're talking about your project, don't only talk about what you did, talk about the impact of the entire project, like own at the level of the project. You will talk about your own responsibilities, but also talk about more holistically what it entails and how it's impacting the firm, the client, right? So pay attention to details, which is what we're good at, but also be able to address things at a high level, think about big picture, that's one. And the second is, I know it's easier said than done. don't get too emotional. Don't take things that personally. A lot of times, other people just want to get the job done as well. Sometimes people take your credit. Sometimes people may be yelling at you for some whatever mistakes in the process of a project. Sometimes people badmouth intentionally or unintentionally. Don't worry about those. Don't play that game. Be very good at what you do and don't take it personally. As long as you really contribute to what you're doing, and obviously you have to represent yourself in situations where you should be advocating for yourself. But otherwise, don't get bogged down to some emotional aspect, the nitty-gritties of the politics. At some point, at a certain level, you will have to deal with those. But as you are growing, if you get too bothered by those moments, you're not going to be able to unleash your full potential when you actually should be focusing on the actual deliverable of the work. When you're really good at what you do, nobody can touch you. And maybe the last thing is, I had a point and I'm kind of blanking out on that point.
It will come back. Yeah.
It will come back. It will come back. Yeah. I'll make that point when it comes back to me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Somebody said you cannot do it. You must make it.
Oh, it come back to me, which is always think about commercial impact.
Yeah. I love
Commercial impact. Yeah. At the end of the day, yeah, you can stroke someone's ego, or just like a lot of females started off with bringing coffee to the bosses, or like arranging a conference room, or like all the presentation we had to work on, all the formatting, whatever. Now AI can probably do that, but we all started off like doing very basic work. At the end of the day, what you can do is driving commercial impact. And one of the best ways, which I think May actually did it, and I did it at BlackRock as well, is to march into new territories.
Yeah.
Try to initiate new businesses. The growth areas of a firm is always where they want to basically pile in more resources, more hiring budget, more budget in terms of everything. And you can get on a rocket ship early. And there are ways to identify if this is even a rocket ship or a sinking ship, right? But if it's a rocket ship, get on it early. Even when you're young, if you get in early enough, you could raise to the top relatively quickly. But it's a strategic job to identify what it is, and it needs a lot of like capability and goodwill to be able to get there. But I was able to do that when I started, when I launched BlackRock Educational Academy, and made it an example when you started some like new initiatives, right?
Yeah.
If you work in corporate America, that's one of the best ways to do it. And if you're an entrepreneur, you can do it on a daily basis, because that's what it means to be an entrepreneur.
That's actually my second question.
Oh, okay.
So both of you, and almost like all of us, the four of us, we had experience working in corporate, me more specifically working in school a lot, and then we become entrepreneur. We all have our business. So to your point of view, like what is the difference between working in a corporate and being your own boss?
So many differences. I would say that I love what you had to say about this idea of being able to see opportunities and seize them, especially if they're in new areas. You know, I would say that if you're at a big company, you have the upside of being extremely resource rich. Most big companies have tons of extra cash to help you along. And if you're an entrepreneur, it's not like you can't see the same thing. You just have to be extremely resourceful and extremely driven. And I think you'd even have to be more refined on exactly what she's saying as far as what is commercial and what is the nice to have. What is the thing we do not have to address right now because it is not eminent. It is not the most important and pressing thing. What actually moves things forward strategically, that's always the tough one, because there's an infinite number. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, even an intrapreneur, if you're doing it within a corporation, one of the skills that is being stimulated is your idea to see what's possible, your idea to see where it should be and where you think you could fit yourself in that. You know, there's never a lack of ability to spend money. There's always just an identification of what is the proper spend of that money.
I think there's a lot of benefit of working in a big firm.
Oh, for sure.
And a lot of people choose to start working in a big firm to start with in their career for the reason of it provides a safety net, it gives you the prestige, it has a lot of support. But the biggest thing for me is the learning opportunity. You probably observe some of the best mind, not just like how they handle day-to-day situations, how they handle negotiation, decision-making, and also how strategically they think about the future of the firm and how they anticipate clients' need. One of the biggest challenge of one day you become an entrepreneur is actually a very lonely journey. It's lonely. How do you get that honest feedback, constructive feedback? If a client want to do business with you, they will do business with you. If they don't want to do business with you, they wouldn't tell you why. Not the real reason, most likely. But if you work in corporate America, your boss may have to give you more genuine feedback because your boss needs you to deliver work for them. So observation and actually is a learning experience, and the benefit of seeing a lot and institutional quality deliverables from the entire platform is the biggest benefit of working out of a larger firm. But I love being an entrepreneur. You can be creative, you have the freedom, the flexibility, most importantly, ownership. And what ownership means is that I can make my own decisions. I own up to those decisions. I can choose who I work with. I can choose who to partner with. And in most of the case in corporate America, as much as I was a senior enough person, but I'm not the ultimate decision maker. I'm calling the shot. So sometimes I need to work with situations where maybe I don't agree with, or I don't really want to serve this client. The value system is different. Maybe in sales and marketing, you need to sell products. Maybe the investment banking, sales and trading deal with this all the time. Maybe you don't agree with the sales strategy or the pricing. But being an entrepreneur, if you see a problem in the industry, you actually have the power to shape things because you can choose who you work with and who you partner with.
I can't agree more, because when I started my first job at a corporate, my job is to teach trial session, SAT session for student here in America. And then the trial session is very intense, 15 minutes. People come in and listen to your talk, and if they like your session, they will sign up the course. If they don't, they will leave. So 15 minutes, I have to convince everyone in the room that I'm the best instructor you can get. So in the beginning, it was very intense and stressful. But because of that experience, I have no fear of talking to anyone, right? I have people leaving in front of my face. It's like, okay, I don't want to sign with this instructor. And after that, you feel like so powerful. I don't care anymore. I can do this over and over. And so unlike them, I started my firm pretty early. So right now, I've been running 3 companies for over 13 years. I would say the biggest difference I feel is my company is my legacy. So I can sort of, working with my team, I can decide what kind of company culture I want to build up and what kind of legacy I want to build with my team as well. So that's something, just like Danye said, is really, really enjoyable. That's why every Monday, some people hate Monday, I love Monday. I love to go to work. Yeah.
I'm sure you're a great boss. There's a saying, be the change you want to see. Be the change you want to see. And being an entrepreneur is sometimes the best way to deliver that.
Yeah, I just want to ask you a question, like being entrepreneur, being a woman, how do you balance your family, or balance your women's some very other small things?
There's no balance. I don't believe in work-life balance. Some people talk about work-life sequencing. So there are certain times you have to, if you have a deliverable, you have a big client, you have something that's very important to your business, you have to focus 100, 200%. And then maybe a certain period of time you prioritize that. And then maybe you give yourself a break, spend time with family, or if you have kids, spend time with kids. And basically catch up with everything you need to catch up. And this is like sequencing. But it's hard when you are having a demanding career, you want to really do well. If you're running 3 companies, I don't know how you do that either. You must have great support from your team. But I think in general, support is very important. The person you chose to spend your life with, support of what you do and who you want to become, and recognizing and even appreciating how demanding that career might be is very important. Yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah, I love that answer. And I would also highlight from both these ladies what they said as relates to the accountability of things. You know, once you are, especially I think entrepreneurs, I always admire this, among every entrepreneur I meet, is their understanding that whatever it is that they're creating, it's really just them. At that point, they get all the blame, they get all the accolades. And so weirdly enough, in your personal private, your personal life, work-life balance, that's also you. That's also you making a set of decisions. And sometimes you'll do amazing and everything will be like, oh, I'm super mom or super this or what have you, and sometimes you'll mess up. And if you mess up, you just pick yourself up just like you would in any situation and then make a call. What is it that you are trying to achieve? What are you trying to do at all times? It's such an accountability sort of way of thinking about life.
I do think that's a really good point because at the end of the day, we have choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, we make those choices.
Yeah.
When I say there's no work-life balance, there's no work-life balance for the career that I chose to build. But I'm not everyone. I can't make decisions for you. Some people really value work-life balance. They will choose maybe not to become an entrepreneur, or they become a freelancer, but not in the way of certain entrepreneurial lifestyle would demand. So it's a personal choice at the end of the day. But if you do want to start a family, then you need to price in that and what that means, not just for you, but your significant other in each of your family as well. It's hard, but I'm just saying, there's no balance if you really prioritize something. But again, that's your choice, and you need to know. It goes back to the notion of knowing who you are.
I was laughing a little bit about when Donna asked the question because women definitely get this question more, like how you balance your career
it's
and
just on male
your
panel
family
probably wouldn't get
and
that.
all this. And it's true, there's no balance, right? You just have, especially when you're working as an entrepreneur. And I even though I love my job so much, but I work in my dream. Like when I have my dream, I'm always working in my dream. That's how much I work. So if you ask me like, oh, how is your balance in your life? And you're like, I don't see that balance. Sometimes even it's a day off and then things come up and you have to handle it. And I think that's also a big difference, like the priority and then the responsibility of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it feels like a weird word, I'd almost say, in the sense that, you're not necessarily balancing so much as you're executing on a vision that you see, and there are elements of that vision. Like let's also not get confused that there's not I have no interest in having relationships that we would call family either. I mean, clearly there are sacrifices that we make for our family, and I know Serene well enough to know that that's true. There's certain things that we are trying to do, and there's a vision of how we achieve it. I think you even mentioned a little bit as like a hint to all of us, like, do you get help? Do you, and the answer in a lot of cases is yes, and we then must make enough money for that help, or we must figure out, as you mentioned, the significant other that is like, yes, this future that you're painting looks like the future that I'm interested in too. These are all very rare things. So balance may be that this word balance that's come up so much, that's become such a common language, is the wrong framework for the way that maybe we might encourage folks to look at it if they're going the entrepreneur route. It's more how do all the pieces fit? Some of the pieces will not fit. How do we feel about that? What can we do given that? That sort of thing. It's just problem solving. It's a little bit more problem solving in the field of it.
Because there's trade-off in everything.
Maybe
so probably we need a new framework.
Maybe we need a new phrase or something. Because the balance one, we always lose whenever that one comes up. We always sounds like we're doing something wrong. Yeah, exactly.
Just decide you want to sacrifice this or not sacrifice this for your dream.
Yeah, because even the folks that love you want you to succeed in this, so they're happy to to some extent, okay, within reason. Sometimes we'll go a little bit too far, and quite frankly, if you go too far, sometimes you feel so drained as a human being. You've gone too far, so there's that too. So that element might be true, but there's a vision that we're trying to accomplish together with the people that we have in our lives.
And also I want to ask you, like, for all the young professionals, what the most important fact for them to get success in their career path or get advancement career opportunities for them?
Any advice you can give for anyone who is fresh out of college or currently looking for transition or want to start their own business? Yeah.
one thing.
Well, it doesn't have to be one thing. Yeah, that's too hard. Let's, a couple things.
Okay, I'll start with one that maybe is a little different. We haven't talked about it. Is try to have a happy demeanor. Sometimes folks don't realize how much more comes to you if you're just pleasant to be around.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I mean, and it's weird too because it is a very stressful and scary. I say that to counteract all of the stressful things that are said to young people coming out of college. Oh my gosh, this is a terrible economy, which it's not necessarily. There's good and bad and everything. Oh my gosh, you have to achieve all these things. How stressful. But if we could take a half a step and just be more happy about this awesome life that you're about to proceed on. I think it actually might help, and it might be the one thing that is a little different from what everyone's hearing these days.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense because I used to receive a lot of networking requests either on LinkedIn or cold email, and I always love reading a message where there's a lot of positivity, just positive energy, like this person is naturally excited about a certain career path and have this natural curiosity in understanding more about what I do, what he or she can bring to the table. Being optimistic and a very welcoming energy is very important. And I do want to quickly talk about, because I know in the prepared questions we had a specific note of this. There's actually a difference between networking, mentoring, and sponsorship. So when you're first out of the gate, you may not even think about sponsorship yet. You may be thinking about mentoring and networking. And a lot of people may be seeking out for mentors, but I don't recommend just blindly go out and seek out mentors. Because mentors obviously have a strategic interest in your success, and they probably be willing to bring resources to you. But you need to have that level of trust and chemistry to really reveal to the mentor your real problems. You don't need a mentor to tell you, keep doing what you're doing. Oh, you're doing great. That's a cheerleader. That's not a mentor. The mentor needs to tell you what you're doing that is off, that is wrong, that's not being appreciated, and you don't know, and how you can overcome that. And that's how you can advance. A mentor needs to be a problem solver, and you need to have the trust with a mentor to achieve that. Networking is about gathering information. If you go to any kind of coffee chat, you go to any info sessions, for a session like this, if you want to understand each of our careers, ask thoughtful questions, not questions as you can search on Google or go to each of our LinkedIn, can get a straight out answer. Ask more thoughtful questions so we can remember who you are and what you want to do. And hopefully you can turn us from a networking candidate to your mentor. Okay? And finally, about sponsorship. Early on in your career, you don't need that because you need to focus on what you do and being very good at what you do. But once you get to a certain level, you need sponsors. And sponsors, think of a Hunger Game. Those people who are sending things that can save your life are sponsors. They're not just mentors, because mentors can be from different industries, different aspects of lives, but you care about their opinion and they can help you wholeheartedly, but they cannot influence the outcome. Sponsors can influence the outcome. Sponsors can decide you are not on the layoff list. Sponsors can decide you get the promotion. Sponsors can decide even if you got laid off, you get a great recommendation. Okay, you need to cultivate those relationships, most likely in your own firm or in a related firm. So those are the differences, and you should think strategically about those. But also, if you really master the skill set of networking, finding a good mentor, and seeking out for sponsorship, you will do it naturally. Because I don't want to be on the receiving end for you to approach me only with that objective in your mind. I want you to come to me naturally and build the trust naturally. But I'm just laying out the truth for you guys. Those are the differences. And as you build your career, you need all three.
Yeah, I want to add to that. So I'm an introvert person, and I really don't like to go to any social event. But as you can see, you don't see that from me, right? So my mindset is whenever I go to a setting where I want to talk to someone who is more senior, more experienced, or someone younger, I always think, what can I bring to the table? What can I offer to help? And I remember like when I was in grad school and I had this opportunity to go to a symposium, and their professor from Oxford, Cambridge, they come to New York. So obviously, with them, I'm the grad student, they're the professor. But my mindset is still, what can I help them? So they were talking about what are the good restaurants in New York. And I pull out my list of my favorite restaurant in New York. And I said, oh, these are all my favorite restaurants in New York, and I want to share with you guys. And they kept contact with me over like 5-6 years. Even now, whenever they visit New York, they always want to contact me. Okay, we should try some new restaurants together. That's how you build up relationships. Sometimes it's just that easy, just to tell them your favorite restaurant. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes no, that's super impressive. Sometimes you build great lasting professional relationship, starting off actually becoming friends with them. Yeah. So that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for sharing. And we are also opening for some Q&A. And if you want to be on the camera, right?
Yeah, thank you for sharing
thank you for sharing.
her power. So this topic is focused on her power, empowering and inspiring women. Thank you today.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, so now open for Q&A.
So anyone who have any question, and if you want to come to, in front of camera or, not in front of camera, that's up to you. Anyone? Anyone?
Best time to start a new business. Oh, I feel, okay, there's probably more than one answer to this, but I think the best time to start a new business is when you feel like you've actually set yourself up in a way to not be scared while you're doing it. I don't think it has as much to do with the economy as it has to do with your own personal brain and mindset for whether or not you feel you can execute through. The thing is, there's ups and there's downs, there's good and there's bad. But then that's the economy. You will manage through it. In bad economies, there's opportunity. In good economies, there's opportunity, depending on the industry in both cases. But you are the main thing, and you have to be in a mental state to be able to be fearless through that. And so for some people, that means they need a huge nest egg. For some people, that means they need to have already a handful of clients that they know they will say yes to help fund that cash flow in those early days. And for other people, they're just like, whatever, I got this. And they're just going to go for it completely fearlessly. Those are the brave ones, but it absolutely happens. And I'm always impressed when it does. But I think you're the factor more than anything else.
I agree. So a lot of the students I work with, they're in their high school, and then we help them to start their legit business. They get their angel fund investment in 9th grade, 10th grade. And for me, myself, it's just, I never want to own my own business. I know it's a lot of responsibility, a lot of work, but when opportunity shows, don't hesitate. And I would suggest to start as early as possible, because if you're a student, think about it. If you're still in school, in high school, in college, and if you fail the business, and school resources, you can use it. And if you fail the business, it's a good tryout. It didn't hurt your career. You can still find a job after graduation. But if you're all in to your business, career aside, it's just more at stake.
Yeah, I do think if you know all the challenges and all the up and down of a potential business, you might as well never start it. Meaning, like, a lot of people, if you really go through the process of planning everything, a lot of people actually never get to the actual starting point. So regardless of the economy, regardless of how prepared you think you are, the best time is to start now, because that will push you to actually do more work and to get things out of the gate. And you can always pivot. You can always get more resources and hopefully get investments, so you have budget to hire people and everything. But if you never start, you never even get there. So yeah, just if anyone ever goes through a YC, like Y Combinator program, and that is one of the biggest lesson learned as well, just get started already.
The minimum set of documentation for your business plan. I mean, it depends what kind of business you're doing. Some people need If you're doing AI, you probably need funding, so that's a totally different animal. But if you're, your business probably required very little documentation when you first started. So there's a whole range depending on what it is. I like your answer quite a lot because
I would say enough to get your first client.
yeah, that's a good way to say it too. Yeah.
And also we have some very good lawyers in the audience, so the documentation part, I think they're the best one to ask. Okay. I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, no, we have one more question.
Oh, wow. I mean, if you have samples, let it go.
Time to send your samples. Yeah.
Interesting. So I don't know.
Looks like you already got a client.
To be fair, cosmetics isn't really an industry I know a ton of. I would imagine that you still begin it the same way as any industry where you just really, first of all, live and breathe your product, get started, make sure you have enough capital, and then understand the any kind of business beginning stuff. Like if you need to incorporate, some people don't incorporate until they get to a certain point. Yeah, I think that there's a certain element of just the execution part. But the main thing for all things in business, even especially for entrepreneurship, is figure out how to manage the fear. Because there's a lot of things that are going to happen, and you're going to be like, I don't know how to handle it, and you got to just muscle through it one way or the other, and realize that, hey, I can't be afraid. If I'm afraid, no one's going to actually give me money or alternatively buy my product, or I'm not going to be able to correctly lead my staff through this fear. I mean, so much of leadership and so much of having a business is just about not being scared half the time.
Yeah, I do think it's already a very saturated market. There's tons of products out there already. K-beauty also got very popular for a reason. And if you go into any department stores, there's a lot of options out there already. So if you're launching a new brand, what do you have that's special? And who are your ideal customers? And how do you gather your first set of fans, and why should they come to you? And what is the plan going forward? Think about Glossier. They really started off with just one SKU, but really nurtured a huge internet audience because they address a specific need of a certain type of Gen Z growing customers. And they started off initially as entire D2C, direct to consumer, and then eventually opened physical stores. So there are ways to address this market if you can talk to a specific group of people and let them really become huge fans of your product. But what that looks like and where to find these type of people demands a lot of work. And sometimes starting off, like what Serena is doing, for example, if you're, for example, targeting Asian community or targeting working professionals, and think about how to tap into these networks and maybe conducting focus groups on gathering insight and feedbacks. What is their frustration about some of the current offerings, and what do they want to achieve, and have a true differentiator? And that's maybe how I would approach it.